States dealt with this in the past. One of the things, my PowerPoint is completely blank. Okay, this is one day. One of the things that's important for us to know is how the United States has managed this issue of oneness and how they struggled with it before now. But one of the first things they struggled with is they started looking at this issue of oneness was to bring people to the United States and make them, to subrogate them, to put them in slavery, use them for your benefit, use them for the oneness of what was needed to advance the nation. One thing that we deeply understand and realize that this nation was birthed off of free labor, off of free ability. And so the whole thing that has to do with cotton being king and sugar fields and rice fields all being worked by slaves gave the ability for the United States to trade with other worlds for free and sustained us with an incredible economy that allowed us to become a strong nation. And we became that strong nation. It really then began to change the way the world was. So the first step at oneness, when we all were brought together in the United States, the first step to do that was to subrogate a group of people and to turn them into slaves. This was a particular kind of slavery, and you really need to understand this. The kind of slavery that existed, or the kind of slavery that happened before, was a slavery that not only were you born as a slave, your children were slaves when they were born, and their children were slaves, and you were property. Well, that's a pretty powerful statement there, that you become property and you become owned. And there was no way to get out of this. And that's the way that it would continue to be. So when you begin this oneness relationship in the United States with the issues of subrogation, and then as we move out of this issue of slavery, we move into segregation, a time when now we're said that we are socially separate and we actually should be biologically separate from one another. So we moved into a time of segregation. And so by law, you were separated from one another, and laws kept us separate and then also kept us separate socially. You couldn't sit at the same bar together, food bar together. You couldn't go to the same water fountains. You were separately, socially kept distant from each other. Couldn't ride on the same buses or L's together or trains together. All that was kept separate from one another. And so that was another way that we really began to deal with our history, was to keep everybody separate and separate by law. Now they actually created a law from this that was called separate but equal. Let me talk to you a little bit about this law. It